You run your hand over the soft, warm fabric of your modern winter sweater, pulling it tight against the mild evening chill outside. But for over 100,000 years, your ancestors didn't have cozy textile factories or heated homes waiting for them in the dark. They had to violently strip bloody hides from other predators, their trembling hands gouging tiny holes with bone fragments just to build a fragile shield. This is exactly why Ape to Legend exists, excavating one ancestral secret every single week. Hit subscribe to stay on the journey with us. Today, you open a massive closet full of clothes and sigh in frustration, claiming you have absolutely nothing to wear for the day. But to your ancient ancestors, clothing was never an expression of identity or fashion. It was a brutal, hard-won survival technology paid in blood. Imagine stepping out into a vast Ice Age tundra where the relentless freezing wind pierces your naked skin like millions of microscopic icy daggers. Your core temperature plummets instantly. Your muscles spasm violently as the cold bites deeper, threatening to swallow you alive before the sun even sets. Without a thick coat of fur, your delicate, tropical body is a glaring biological error, wandering helplessly through a hostile, frozen, unforgiving white world. You see, 1,000,000 years ago, walking upright on the scorching African savanna forced your evolutionary line to completely shed its thick, heavy fur. Sweating became your ultimate cooling mechanism, a biological superpower allowing you to run down exhausted prey under the blistering heat of the midday sun. But then, the climate shifted, and your adventurous ancestors boldly migrated north. They walked straight into the nightmare of the Last Glacial Maximum. Suddenly, the very evolutionary trait that made you the undisputed apex predator in the heat now threatened to freeze the blood in your veins. Every pore on your skin stands up, a desperate, useless reflex trying to trap a layer of heat that simply isn't there anymore. You are entirely naked against the apocalypse. To survive this freezing hell, you couldn't just wait thousands of years for thick fur to evolve. You had to steal it. You had to peel the thick, warm skin off the megafauna that hunted you, wrapping yourself in their stolen thermal armor. But just throwing a raw, stiff hide over your shivering shoulders wasn't enough to survive a blizzard. Cold air creeps in through every gap. A loose pelt is practically useless when the Arctic wind tears across the tundra, aggressively sucking the precious heat right out of your fragile chest. To truly conquer the ice, humanity needed a technological leap. And surprisingly, it wasn't a bigger spear, a heavier club, or a brighter fire. It was something much smaller. You see, you weren't the only human species wandering this frozen wasteland. You shared it with the Neanderthals. Neanderthals were biologically built for the bitter cold. They possessed barrel-chested bodies, shorter, thicker limbs to conserve body heat, and massive, highly adapted nasal cavities. Those giant noses acted like built-in radiators, heating the freezing air before it could shock their lungs. They were the ultimate Ice Age survivors. But your sapiens ancestors? They were tall, lanky, and hopelessly unequipped for a winter that never seemed to end. They were walking biological targets. To bridge this massive physical gap, your ancestors had to outsmart the environment. They had to invent a way to seal the cold out completely. Deep inside the frozen dirt of the Denisova Cave in Siberia, archaeologists unearthed a tiny, incredibly fragile object dating back around 50,000 years. It wasn't a weapon of war. It was a needle, meticulously carved from the bone of a large bird, featuring a deliberately drilled eyelet. This microscopic tool changed everything. With it, your ancestors stopped merely draping themselves in dead skins and actually began tailoring them to fit their bodies. They used tough animal sinew as thread, piercing thick leather to create tight, overlapping garments that trapped body heat perfectly against their bare skin. These weren't fashion statements. They were the world's first thermal survival suits. But how do we know exactly when humans started wearing clothes regularly? Animal hides rot away quickly, leaving almost no fossil record behind in the dirt. To find the timeline, scientists had to look somewhere incredibly gross. They didn't look at bones or stones. Instead, they examined a tiny, itching parasite that has tormented humanity for millions of years. the louse. Since the days of the early hominids, head lice had comfortably infested the thick hair on our ancestors' heads, clinging tightly to individual strands. But as humans shed their body fur to survive the African heat, these tiny parasites faced a massive, insurmountable wasteland of bare, exposed skin. The head lice were geographically trapped. They could only survive on the hair on your head, unable to migrate across the vast, hairless desert of your body. That all changed when your ancestors started wrapping themselves in dead animal skins to block the freezing winds of the relentless ice age. Suddenly, an entirely new habitat was created. A dark, warm, artificial fur that clung to the human body, providing a perfect new ecosystem. A rogue population of lice ventured down from the head, mutating and adapting to grip onto the fibers of the animal hides instead of hair. This was the birth of the clothing louse, a distinct mutated species that specifically infests your garments and crawls out only to pierce your skin. In 2011, evolutionary biologist Melissa Toops and her team analyzed the DNA of these two distinct microscopic bugs to solve the mystery. By measuring the genetic differences between head lice and clothing lice, they created a biological clock to calculate exactly when the two species separated. The results were absolutely staggering. The genetic split happened roughly 170,000 years ago, long before the peak of the Ice Age. This microscopic timeline proved that your ancestors didn't wait until they were freezing to death. They began wearing clothes while still in Africa. They started wrapping themselves in hides around 170,000 years ago, setting the stage for their eventual survival in the frozen north. But merely draping a stiff, raw hide over your shivering shoulders is completely different from actually surviving a 50-degree blizzard in the deep tundra. The wind easily rips those loose hides open. To truly seal out the deadly cold, humanity needed to transform raw skin into fitted armor. To seal out the lethal cold, your ancestors couldn't rely on biology. They needed an unprecedented technological revolution to transform raw skins into custom-fitted thermal armor. The weapon that ultimately conquered the Ice Age wasn't a heavier club or a sharper spear. It was something almost invisibly small, buried in the frozen dirt. Deep inside the Denisova Cave in Siberia, archaeologists unearthed a delicate artifact dating back roughly 50,000 years. It was a tiny, fragile bone. Carved from the bone of a large bird, this microscopic tool featured a deliberately drilled eyelet. It was the world's very first sewing needle. A microscopic bone fragment literally saved humanity from freezing. No textbook teaches this. Ape to Legend does. Every week. With this brilliant tool, your ancestors stopped merely draping themselves in dead skins. They sat by the firelight and actually began tailoring those thick hides. Using tough animal sinew as thread, their calloused hands painstakingly threaded the tiny bone eyelet, preparing to create the first artificial biological boundary. They started piercing the thick, stubborn leather, forcing the bone needle through multiple layers. You can almost hear the tough fibers stretching and yielding. By stitching the edges tightly together, they created complex, overlapping seams. This wasn't primitive fashion, it was high-tech engineering, designed to completely block the wind. These fitted garments finally trapped your body heat perfectly against your bare skin. The deadly Arctic air could no longer creep in through the gaps. They crafted the very first parkas, complete with hoods and tight sleeves, constructing a portable microclimate that allowed them to carry the fire's warmth everywhere. When your hunter ancestors stepped back out into the -50-degree blizzard, the freezing wind violently lashed against them, but it couldn't penetrate the stitched leather. For the first time in history, a tropical, hairless ape could confidently walk across a frozen wasteland without violently shivering or facing imminent death. That tiny bone needle didn't just mend torn clothes, it literally stitched humanity's survival into the harsh, unforgiving fabric of deep time. Without that microscopic eyelet, your lineage would have been completely swallowed by the ice. The needle allowed you to expand across the entire frozen globe. Fast forward 50,000 years. You step out of the brutal Ice Age tundra and into the glaring artificial lights of a modern shopping mall. You are completely surrounded by towering mountains of fast fashion, endless racks of cheap, colorful garments, produced at a dizzying, almost reckless speed today. You casually grab a thick winter coat off a plastic hanger, barely glancing at it before tossing it into your massive shopping bag. You buy heavy, insulated jackets that you don't actually need, preparing to survive mild, harmless winters that you barely even experience anymore. Your daily journey simply moves you seamlessly from a heated apartment building into a heated car, and eventually into a perfectly climate-controlled office. That deep, primal gratitude for a single, life-saving layer of warmth has been completely erased from our collective modern consciousness over the centuries. It has been entirely replaced by a society obsessed with fleeting trends, rapid consumption, and using fabric merely to signal social status to others. You open your closet every morning, feeling completely paralyzed by endless choices, utterly blind to the biological miracle hanging quietly on those racks. But despite this modern illusion of safety, your primitive biology hasn't forgotten the sheer terror of the ancient ice that almost killed us. When the temperature drops even slightly, a faint echo of that ancient freezing panic subtly grips your entire nervous system without you noticing. Your modern brain still desperately craves the physical security of being tightly wrapped up and protected from an environment that feels inherently hostile, but the deadly survival context is entirely gone. The soft clothing on your back is no longer a literal shield against a lethal winter. Instead of stopping the Arctic wind from freezing your blood, it merely protects you from the mild draft of an office air conditioner. This profound evolutionary mismatch perfectly explains one of the most universal and cherished human experiences we all secretly share in the modern world today. It explains exactly why your brain intensely rewards you with a massive rush of dopamine whenever you achieve the ultimate feeling of being cozy. Have you ever wondered why, sitting by a window, watching a violent winter storm rage outside, makes you feel so incredibly peaceful and safe? Evolutionary psychologist J. Appleton called this the prospect and refuge theory. Your brain constantly seeks environments where you can clearly see potential incoming external threat, but simultaneously, you must remain completely concealed and protected from those exact dangers. A modern glass window perfectly mimics the mouth of an ancient cave. You routinely clutch a steaming mug of hot tea or coffee. That simple warmth radiating into your palms isn't just a cozy winter aesthetic, it aggressively hacks your biology. The hot liquid raises your internal temperature, simulating the life-saving warmth of sitting inches away from a prehistoric roaring campfire. Then there is the heavy blanket pressing down on your chest. Deep physical pressure literally lowers your heart rate and actively suppresses your circulating cortisol levels. It vividly recreates the primal sensation of huddling tightly packed together with your entire tribe, sharing precious body heat to survive a brutally freezing night. You listen to the rain violently lashing against the glass or the fire crackling in the hearth. These specific frequencies act as a biological lullaby. To your ancient ears, a roaring fire or a heavy downpour meant that dangerous predators were also hiding, completely unable to hunt you down right now. For the first time all day, your hyperactive amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, finally powers down, letting go of the constant, exhausting survival vigilance. The cold no longer threatens to violently swallow you. The darkness can no longer hide a stalking beast. You are enveloped in a complete biological sanctuary. Modern marketing tries to proudly sell you this profound evolutionary relief as a simple lifestyle trend, offering expensive scented candles and oversized fluffy designer knitwear. But your body isn't simply participating in a cute winter aesthetic. When you feel cozy, your nervous system is actually celebrating a successful victory over the apocalypse. Every time you bundle up, your brain quickly releases a massive wave of dopamine, intensely rewarding you for successfully outsmarting the freezing, lethal forces of wild nature. You have successfully engineered an artificial summer right in the middle of a brutal winter, heavily relying on the ancient technology of tightly stitched, layered thermal armor. But there is a hidden, dangerous price to paying for this endless comfort. By wrapping yourself in layers of fabric, you have accidentally tricked your biology. Your ancient body evolved to experience drastic shifts in temperature. The bitter cold wasn't just a threat, It was a crucial biological trigger for survival. When the freezing wind hit your ancestors' bare skin, it violently shocked their system, forcing a remarkable internal mechanism to immediately wake up and activate. It activated something called brown fat. Unlike regular white fat that stores excess energy, brown adipose tissue acts like a microscopic furnace burning inside you. This ancient tissue actively burns through calories to generate massive amounts of body heat, literally keeping your vital organs from freezing in the deep snow. It aggressively strengthened your immune system and kept your metabolism running at peak performance. The winter cold was basically an extreme biological workout for them. Fast forward to today. The moment you feel the slightest chill, you instantly reach for a thick sweater or turn up the digital indoor thermostat. By constantly sealing yourself in a perfectly regulated, artificial summer, you are actively starving your body of the environmental stress it desperately needs to function. Your brown fat slowly goes dormant. Your internal furnace quietly shuts down because your primitive brain assumes that the freezing winter has simply ceased existing. This profound evolutionary mismatch leaves your immune system incredibly sluggish. You become weaker, highly susceptible to illnesses, and paralyzed by sheer, unnatural modern environmental comfort. We use the bone needle to conquer the ice, but now we are practically suffocating our own biology beneath mountains of cheap, unnecessary fast fashion. You continuously wash these garments in harsh chemical detergents, completely obliterating the natural bacteria on your skin that once protected your ancestors from deadly pathogens. The very clothing that saved humanity from the apocalypse is now blinding your nervous system to the natural rhythms of the wild, untamed outside world. You look at your crowded closet not as a survival toolkit, but as a stressful burden. The magic of that first stitched seam is forgotten. We have successfully locked the freezing monsters out, but in doing so, we have accidentally locked our resilient, powerful bodies inside a permanently comfortable cage. So, the next time you open your massive closet and feel completely paralyzed by the overwhelming fast fashion choices, pause for just a single moment. Remember that every single thread woven into your modern sweater carries the brutal, bloody legacy of an ancient ancestor who bravely refused to surrender. They violently gouged holes with tiny, fragile bone needles and pulled animal sinew through stiff, raw leather, stitch by painstaking, life-saving stitch in the dark. And when you curl up tightly under a heavy, weighted blanket while listening to a violent storm rage outside, feeling that immense rush of coziness, understand that it is never just a psychological trick of modern comfort. Your nervous system is deeply, physically remembering a monumental victory over nature. It is remembering the exact moment humanity stopped running from the lethal ice, banded together tightly, and fundamentally re-engineered the absolute limits of biological survival. That microscopic bone needle didn't just casually mend torn animal hides. It literally stitched humanity's ultimate survival into the harsh, unforgiving fabric of deep time. That epic, ancient story of technological innovation, of violently shivering in the frozen dark, and of ultimate planetary conquest, continues to pump quietly through your modern veins. The modern world may have successfully built an artificial summer around you, but your ancient biology will always deeply respect the primal terror of winter. We are the only hairless apes that boldly decided to wear the stolen skin of apex predators just to walk out and conquer the frozen planet. Your body isn't broken, weak, or flawed. It is simply remembering 300,000 years of human history. And that magnificent story continues, from a shivering ape in the snow to a modern legend. Subscribe to Ape to Legend and stay on this fascinating evolutionary journey with us. So, the next time you casually run your bare hand over the incredibly soft, warm fabric of your perfectly tailored, modern winter sweater, pulling it tightly against your chest to simply block out a mild, harmless evening chill outside, feeling entirely safe, perfectly comfortable, and blissfully warm. Take a silent moment to realize that this effortless warmth was violently born from the absolute coldest, darkest, and most terrifying nights your ancestors ever faced.